everybody, it's Kelsee Briana J, and in today's video I'm going to be reviewing, swatching, and demoing the new Natasha Denona Metropolis palette. And this palette was set to launch at the end of September, but she surprised us and she launched it a little bit early. So I ordered this palette and got it on my doorstep super soon. But the reason why my video wasn't out the moment that I got this palette in my hands was that your girl was out of town. So that kind of threw a wrench in my plans. And so now I had to work really fast to get this video up. So that's why I just wanted to do one look. That way I can get this video up as fast as possible, because a lot of you all have been beating down my door. Like, Kelsee, where's the video? That's what we're doing today. And I want to go ahead and jump into the details of this palette. That way you guys can decide on if you want to purchase it or not. So this is what the packaging looks like. It is this beautiful blue color. I love the color that she chose for this palette. It says the Natasha Denona Metropolis palette. And what's different about this one is that this one is a 28 pan eyeshadow palette. And this is the first time that Natasha Denona has given us a 28 pan eyeshadow palette since she first launched her brand. So that is when we first got to know her. She launched the two 28 pan eyeshadow palettes, and since then she has not launched that large of an eyeshadow palette. So I'm very excited about this. So here's what the palette looks like. Again, it has the same blue color. Sometimes she gives us the hard plastic and sometimes she gives us the fabric, and this one looks like a nice vinyl packaging. And again, it says the name of the palette and it says Natasha Denona's name, and I personally prefer this type packaging just because I feel like it looks totally different than anything else out on the market. So the palette does come with a mirror, and unlike the original 28 pan eyeshadow palettes, this one actually has the cover. I was an early adopter and supporter of Natasha Denona, so when I purchased my 28 pan eyeshadow palettes, at first it did not come with this plastic slip cover, so I had to look at the back of the box to know the names. But you know, everybody else that bought it afterwards, they got the little plastic slip cover. So I'm happy that she includes this now, because it makes it so much easier whenever you're doing tutorials to line up which color that you're using. So here's what the palette looks like. 28 pans of eyeshadow. And as you all can see, there's a mix of finishes in here. There are two different eyeshadow formulations in this palette. Brand new eyeshadow palette formulations and brand new colors. So there are 28 shades of all newness in here. And you all can see that it has the neutral tones as well as pops of color. The description for this palette says that these extraordinarily rich pressed pigment shadows deliver maximum color payoff. They're hydrating and smooth for optimum texture and comfortable all day wear. As you all can see, there are 28 pans of eyeshadow in here, and there's a lot of product in here, but there has been a bit of a downgrade in the amount of product that you get from her other 28 pan eyeshadow palettes, and I will give you guys a quick overview of how much product you're getting in this palette versus the other palettes. This palette retails for $129, which is on par with Natasha Denona's other eyeshadow palettes that she's come out with in the past few years. But if you guys purchased her initial 28 pan palettes, then you guys will know that those palettes were $239. So that was a little bit harder to swap that card for, but like I said, I was an early adopter, so I did go ahead and invest. So for those of you all who are curious, here's a size comparison. Try not to blind y'all. On my right is the original 28 pan eyeshadow palette from Natasha, and this one is the new 28 pan eyeshadow palette from Natasha. So as you all can see, the one on the left is just a little bit smaller as far as the packaging goes, and when you open it up, there are smaller pans. I have some notes here, so if I'm looking to the left, I'm looking at my notes. So here's the original 28 pan eyeshadow palette. As you all can see, I have not even made a dent in one of these eyeshadows. I've had this eyeshadow palette since 2016. It looks like I've used it, but I haven't really made a dent in it as far as the amount of eyeshadow that I've used from this palette. The old 28 pan eyeshadow palette has a lot of product in here. Like I said, this palette retails for $239. This palette has gone on sale a few times over the years, but overall it consistently retails for $239. This palette has 70 grams of eyeshadow and and in each pan there's 2.5 grams of eyeshadow. Breaking down the cost per gram, it costs $3.41 per gram of eyeshadow, or if you're breaking down the cost per ounce, it costs $96.80. And then looking at the new 28 pan eyeshadow palette, this one has 38.45 grams of product, which is a little bit more than half of the original 28 pan eyeshadow palette, which is still a considerable amount of eyeshadow. Looking at the cost per gram of the eyeshadows in the Metropolis palette, it will cost $3.36 per gram, or looking at the cost per ounce, it would cost $95.60 per ounce, which is not that big a difference than the original 28 pan palette, because technically the original 28 pan eyeshadow palettes are a better value, but it only differs by a few cents. So unless you're being super technical, it's not that far off in terms of the value that each eyeshadow palette provides. Comparing the value of her 15 pan eyeshadow palettes, which this is the type of eyeshadow palette that she has given us consistently throughout the years. She's given us the 15 pan eyeshadow palette more times than any other type of palette in her brand. This one is the gold palette. This one also retails for $129, so same price as the 28 pan eyeshadow palette. As you all can see, the pans in the 15 pan eyeshadow palette are bigger than the ones in this one. There's 37.5 grams of product in this palette, or 1.2 ounces of products, and this one has 38.45 grams of products, or 1.35 ounces of products. So there is more product in the new Metropolis palette than there is in her 15 pan eyeshadow palettes on average. And then looking at the cost per gram, this one is more expensive at $3.44 per gram, as opposed to $3.36 per gram of eyeshadow in this palette. And lastly, I'm going to compare it to the Sunrise palette, which is the first time that she scaled down one of her larger size eyeshadow palettes since she went from doing the 28 pan palettes to the 15 pan palette. So she decided to give us less product and charge a lesser price point. So this palette costs $65, and again, it does have the 15 shades in here. Looking at both of these palettes with a naked eye, the pan sizes of both of these palettes look pretty similar, but I'll have you know there's twice as much product in each pan of the eyeshadows in the Metropolis palette than there is in each pan of eyeshadow in the Sunrise palette. So this palette has about half as much product as the Metropolis palette does. The Sunrise palette has 19.25 grams of product, and the Metropolis palette has 38.45 grams of product. And in each pan in the Sunrise palette, there's 0.67 ounces of product, and in each pan in the Metropolis palette, there's 1.35 ounces of product. So the cost per gram of the Sunrise palette is $3.38, and the cost per ounce is $97.01, and the cost per gram of the Metropolis palette again is $3.36, and the cost per ounce is $95.60. But I would say in terms of Natasha Denona eyeshadows that this palette is a pretty good value, because she scaled it down to the point where the cost per gram and the cost per ounce are consistent with all of these palettes. There's a little bit of a variation there, but it's not so much to where one palette significantly costs more than the other palette. It's pretty much on par with her price line. I'm not mad at this. I hope that she continues on with this amount of products and this price point. I'm excited to have this palette. This palette is in celebration of Natasha Denona's 5th year anniversary of her brand, and the Metropolis palette is inspired by none other than the best city in the world, New York City. I love New York, guys. I really, really do. But I definitely get the New York vibe. Before I even knew what her inspiration for this palette was, I could already tell that it was a city vibe. So I'm going to go ahead and insert the swatches of this palette. And then following that, I will insert the comparison swatches that I have. I didn't go too in depth with the comparison swatches. Just a few that really stood out to me in case you all were curious. But then following that, I will show you all how to create this eye look. And then make sure you stay tuned until the end, and I will tell you all my final thoughts about the Metropolis palette. So I hope that you all enjoy. with the color Rhizome with the Sonia G Crease 2 brush. And I already have my eyes primed. I have on the Anastasia Beverly Hills eye primer. Going directly on top, I am just going to buff this in my crease and then buff it up. And this is going to be my transition color. So back and forth. I feel like an aerobics instructor. I don't know why. I'm like, and 1 and 2 and buff and 3 and 4 and buff. But just continue to apply this. I am going to apply it to be pretty opaque and then go in and buff that color up and diffuse it. But this is just going to help us blend out everything else on the eyelid. That applies so smoothly. I'm impressed. Same brush, and I need lethal. Just going to saturate this on my brush. And honestly, if you wanted to, you could go in with a more detailed brush to do this next step. But since I don't feel like dirtying up my brushes, I'm just going to take the same one. Basically, all we are doing is applying this more directly in the crease. And try not to cover up that first color too much. Yes, this is exactly what I want it to look like. You know, like that baby puke type color, like it's cute, but it's not, but it is though type look. That is what I want to go for. So I am just going to go in with this color all the way across and concentrate it here. And I'm not diffusing that color up like I did the first one. So I'm just taking my time and building this color up. And it's okay if a little bit gets on the lid because we'll just go back in and clean it up. Now I'm going to take a flat shader brush. This is the Sonia G Builder 3 and the color Shield. So now I'm going to pat this color right on the center of the lid. But this color is smooth, baby. Oh, that's so pretty. But I just want it right in the center. I'm going to put a color out here. I'm going to put a color in there. But this one is going to be right in the middle like Beyonce. Same brush, and I'm going to dip into Enigma. And I am just going to tap that right next to the edge of where the other color is. Right here. And then on the edge up here by the crease. And then continue to pack this color on the outer corner and then blend it up. This color is building up very slowly. Let's see how long it takes us to get it to be fully opaque because I do want it to look like an inky navy and not just like a wash of blue. So I'm just going to continue building her. Be very careful as to not take this too far above the crease because I don't want the eye look to look messy. So just be very cognizant of where you are stopping this eyeshadow. You don't want to take it too far up. I actually am going to go back in with just a little bit of that olive color that we put in the crease, Lethal, and really focus that back in the crease area to blend out this eye look. Now I'm going to go into the inner tear ducts color and I'm going to take the shade Orium. I am just going to take this brush in this color, pop it on the inner corner, get that nice highlight going, and then build this color up. Got really intense really quick, so I thought this was going to be like a little sheer color and you know I would have to take my time and build it up, but no. You go in with a little bit, you blend it out, and then you go in with a little bit more. Next thing you know, you have full-on stardust on your inner corner. So be careful. Same color, and let's pop that on the lower inner corner. So just wrap it around and bring it on over. I'm going to stop it about right here. Same brush, and I'm going to go into the color Imperia. So I'm going to pop that right in the center. Lastly, I'm going to take the same brush and the color Royal. Very carefully, I'm going to add this color on the outer corner. So right here, and then connect it to the top. Very, very beautiful. So I need to do the other eye, and then I'll add my liner and lashes, and I'll be right back. So the final look is done. So now let's talk about this palette, starting with the packaging. I think the packaging of this palette is absolutely beautiful. The varnish of it, it just gives you that classic Natasha Denona feel. I love that she brought it back to this similar type packaging that she gave us when she initially launched her brands, and I love this color. I definitely feel like it stands out amongst the crowd, and it makes me excited to use the palette. I know a lot of people are like, well, packaging doesn't matter, and most of the time for me it does. There are some instances to where I'll just say whatever, it works and it gets the job done, but for the most part I prefer pretty packaging, and I definitely think this is gorgeous, and it's not super heavy. I feel comfortable holding this in one hand, and I also feel comfortable traveling with this because it's lightweight but it's still sturdy. As far as the color story of this palette, I feel like it is absolutely gorgeous. If I were creating a palette, like if I had to choose from single eyeshadows, this looks like something that I would do just because it fits my everyday life. I feel like this palette is very beautiful to look at as well as versatile to use. I definitely think that we have colors similar to these in our collection overall, but for me, I don't have anything that is organized in this manner and put all together and updated in this manner, so I'm happy to have this in my collection. I feel like this palette is pretty much like the best of Natasha Denona. You know how like artists have like a huge body of work, like singers and rappers and stuff, and then 15-20 years down the line they have their best of album? That's what I feel like this palette is. I feel like it took little bits and pieces of all of Natasha Denona's palettes and put it all together and modernized the colors and updated them in a way to where you're not purchasing the same exact colors that you already have if you own all of her other palettes, but giving us a little bit something different. But I also feel like this palette is very wearable at the same time. It's not so out of the box to where people feel uncomfortable reaching for it. I feel like this palette is absolutely gorgeous, and you can use it for so many different looks. You can use it during the daytime, you can use it at nighttime, and I feel like the range of looks that you can do using this palette are pretty much endless. The main difference as far as the colors of this palette in comparison to other Natasha Denona palettes are that she gave us greens, and I feel like that is a color that Natasha Denona hasn't really explored too much in any of her other palettes. I know that she's given us gold a lot, she's given us the warm tones, but as far as the greens go and the type of greens that she chose, I feel like that is what makes this palette stand out the most, and I feel like that is what helps it differ from the other palettes that she has in her line. There are similarities across this palette and other Natasha Denona palettes, but like I said, I do feel like the colors in this palette differ enough for you to be able to justify purchasing this palette if you are a Natasha Denona eyeshadow fan, or if you've been holding out and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know which palette to get. I definitely feel like this will be a nice palette to purchase from Natasha Denona to kickstart your collection, because pretty much you have all of the colors that she's known for doing, but it's not exactly the same. So if you get this palette, I feel like this will be a nice way to introduce yourself to her brand. But there's not too much that I would personally change about this palette if I were doing it myself. The only notes that I took were that I would possibly have eliminated one of these blue shades. I was swatching them, trying to find a big difference between them, and on me there are differences, but not enough for me to have included both of them. So personally, I would have swapped one of the blue colors out for a rich purple color, maybe a gray. I feel like that would have added another level of dimension to the palette. I also would have preferred to see a white gold eyeshadow. That's my personal favorite inner tear duct highlight color. There's not really one in here. Other than that, like, that's just me being nitpicky about it. I feel like this palette is pretty close to perfection in terms of a warm toned eyeshadow palette with pops of color. As far as the formulation of this eyeshadow palette, all of the eyeshadows in here are very, very nice. They're super smooth. They're very creamy, easy to blend out. I applied the mattes with ease. I applied the shimmers with ease. I didn't feel like I needed to go in with any additional adhesives. I didn't feel like I needed to spray my brush to get the pigmentation and to get it to look foiled. It just naturally did that on its own, and I really like the way these eyeshadows are formulated. This is some of Natasha Denona's best work work in terms of formulation, because you all already know Natasha Denona will switch up her formula quicker than a lot of you all switch your underwear. She don't play. She switches up that formula and she does not give you any warning. So this new formulation is good. Hopefully she continues with this pattern and gives us more of this. I do feel like it compares a lot to her holiday palettes that she came out with a few years ago, but I looked at the back on the box and the formulation is not the same. The ingredient list is not the same. The Aries and the Joya palettes, think that type formulation, but just a little bit less oily feeling, because we know that one of the issues that we had with the holiday palettes was that they performed, but they did kind of shrink up in the pan and fall out. So hopefully she has resolved that issue and that does not happen with these eyeshadows, because they do give me that same feel. But again, the formulation and the ingredient list is different. So if you like those type eyeshadows, if you like your eyeshadows to have a little bit of slip in them, then I think that you would love these eyeshadows. The only thing about the formulation that I do want to mention to you all, just so you all are aware, is that these eyeshadows do contain talc, and I know a lot of people have sensitivity to talc or they are very opposed to using it, and the talc is listed very high up in the ingredient list for a lot of the shades in this eyeshadow palette, and basically it just tones down the pigmentation of eyeshadows. So I am keeping an eye out on any updates regarding talc in cosmetics. I do research it and I do look it up from time to time again to see if there have been any advancements in the research done against talc in cosmetics, but I just wanted to let that be known for anybody who does have a sensitivity to that. Aside from that, I do like this eyeshadow palette. I think that it is absolutely gorgeous. It is some of Natasha Denona's best work in my opinion, and I will be using this palette come fall. I feel like this one is the perfect fall palette, and I definitely can see myself reaching for this palette and traveling with it and not feeling like I have to use and bring other eyeshadows to do my looks. I think that this one will be one of my new go-to palettes because I can get glam, but I can also get the daytime look popping as well. So let me know what you all think about this palette down in the comment section. I know that this palette has been getting a lot of buzz on the internet, but I have withheld watching everybody else's videos because I wanted to go in and form 100% my own opinion. So let me know what you all think about it. I look forward to reading your comments down in the comment section, and I will talk to you all in my very next video, which will be super soon. Smooches. Bye.